What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to 49ers First Takes. We're doing a little Empire State of Mind off-season talk with my man 49ers Plus podcast. Al, you know him. We usually come to you on Mondays during the regular season. Going to talk a little bit of draft, or excuse me, I'm going to talk a little bit of free agency, kind of the new direction the 49ers are going in, saying goodbye to some players and all that kind of stuff. And then we'll touch on maybe just maybe not specifics on the draft, but maybe just our thoughts on like what direction the 49ers might go in and so on and so forth. But how you doing, Al?
Doing good, Aaron, man. Good to be back talking. I know it's been a couple weeks and we're getting more stuff to talk about with free agency and as we roll towards the draft and then beyond. So more info coming. Otherwise, hate when I'm scraping the bottom of the barrel, or like trying to put together a podcast and really like stretching out a half hour because there's not that much going on, but there certainly is now. So let's hit it.
Yeah, it's I feel I kind of messaged you when free agency started, and there was the talk during the combine about the Niners having to be more frugal, and John Lynch talked about cap constraints and all that stuff. And I was like to myself, yeah, whatever, right? Didn't realize how serious the 49ers really were until we got into training or into free agency. And that the 49ers are not going to be the same team as they were the previous 3 or 4 years. It's like I have in the text over here for the topic. It's the end of an era. Saying goodbye to Dre Greenlaw, saying goodbye to Debo Samuel, saying goodbye to Talanoa Hufanga, saying goodbye to Tabor Pepper, saying goodbye to Jordan Mason. There's going to be a lot of new names and a lot of new faces. I've been kind of all over with my opinions. Part of me is all for getting younger and getting cheaper. But then I want to know what the direction is, where we're going. What is it? Like, what's the blueprint for this thing? You seem like a little bit more level-headed about it. So I figured I'd ask you, what is your opinion on just the overall tone of this offseason as compared to off seasons prior?
Well, I think Lynch talking at the combine, you said it. Everything he said was, if you want to say factual, I mean, I don't know how much we can cry about Jed York and the York family, who are worth billions with a B, getting more frugal and having cash constraints. And that apparently was communicated to Kyle Juszczyk, who they released for money issues and then re-signed, but they guaranteed him $7 million over 2 years. So who knows how much that ultimately saves him in the end. But if you take John Lynch at face value, the direction of the team seems to be like what the Rams and what the Eagles have done, which is really spend a little bit more money on the offensive side of the ball and try to get younger on the defensive side of the ball. And in theory, it's good, but now you have to hit on your draft picks. And we've talked before, and I've said it on my show and on social that I really don't think they're going to make 11 picks. I think they probably trade up at some point. So they probably make 9 picks, let's say, maybe 8 if they get aggressive, because I don't think 11 rookies are going to make this team because it's still a pretty strong roster. So if they can hit on, say, 6 picks, like immediate contributors in 2025, I think it'll be a step in the right direction. But they went for it last year coming off the Super Bowl, and much like 19 into 20, coming off of a Super Bowl appearance is not a good thing the next year for the Niners because they wind up under 500, COVID or not. So a little bit of a reset, get younger, get cheaper. Hopefully you get more talented, faster, and better. And we go from there. And the West is still an extremely, even with Devontae Adams coming to the Rams, an extremely winnable division. Are they a top 4 team in the conference? Probably not. But you don't, Jordan Love gets hurt. Jalen Hurts gets hurt. Something happens to Goff. I mean, like that's happened to the Niners the past, in 2020 and 2024. Then it's going to leave it wide open for somebody else. So I'll pause there. I was not surprised by anything that happened. There were some curious moves that we can talk about, but Lynch wasn't lying. It was just a matter of the moves that they actually make. But the theme was exactly what he said it was going to be.
Man, when you say that, we think that, Jed is kind of becoming a little bit more frugal, caps constraints. my thought is it a long-term thing with this team? Is it something that's going to continue now until forever? Or is it just something that happened that needed to happen this offseason in order to get money off the books? Because the Niners have the highest amount of dead cap in the NFL by far
Mm-hmm.
in the 80 million, between 80 and $85 million range, maybe more. So my question is, when you say that, my thought automatically goes to, like, is this just for this year, the cap constraints? Are they pulling back the spending this off season, and then maybe once they get some of that cap money burnt down
Mm-hmm.
to ashes, do they go back out maybe say next season or the season after and get a little more aggressive again? Because um, again, a lot of the moves we kind of expected. You touched on Greenlaw not coming back. You were right. You touched on Hufanga not coming back. You were right. Debo, I think me and you, and even other people, that was kind of a foregone conclusion after some of the conversation that happened after the season. So, but I think the Greenlaw one is the biggest out of all of them, just because of, when healthy, how much of a difference he makes on the defense. Now you're going to go to the D winners, Tatum, Bethune, Curtis Robinson uh, era of the 49ers. And so now the Niners not only go into, and I don't want to touch on it too much, but they go into the draft with needs
Mm-hmm.
mainly on the defensive side. And now you have to start looking, maybe at linebacker too, if
Mm-hmm.
if it's something that you really think they're that much of a talent drop off from Dre Greenlaw. So I don't know.
Well, and I know we got a couple weeks to kind of talk about the draft, but I think ultimately, if you want to say the biggest needs based on, if we're not talking about like a third string player, linebacker 2 next to Fred, it could be, you said it could be Warner, it could be, I'm sorry, Winters, it could be Jalen Graham, it could be Curtis Robinson, it could be Tatum Bethune, it could be a draft pick, it could be a free agent that shakes free later on. So there's time, not really worried about that. 2 D tackles are going to be needs. I'm not saying 2 rookies are going to start, but one may, and one may be a really strong rotational piece. DN 3, because let's just assume that Bosa and Gross Matos are DNs 1 and 2. A swing tackle, now that Jalen Moore got entirely too much money from the Chiefs, they're going to need that. They figured out the tight end 2 situation, so let's go to tight end 3. Running back 3, maybe because Mason's gone, but there aren't a huge number of starter needs, like maybe cornerback 3 or 4. I don't know if they think Trey Brown is going to slide in to be a starter. I don't know if Jason Pinnock is going to convert from safety to cornerback. I mean, I think they filled more depthish needs in free agency than people are giving credit for. But they certainly, they have enough ammunition to fill needs. They're not at a situation where they can go best player available every pick, because that might be a position where they really don't have a need. But they have the ammunition to do it. And I think the roster is still better than people think. I saw, earlier today, I mean, I know people are posting it, the Niners have more all pros on their roster than the whole NFC West combined by like a 2-1 margin, which is why I still think it's an eminently winnable division. It would have been nicer if Stafford got out of the division, but I'm still cool with the direction that they're headed. Just because you have 11 picks, even if you had 8 picks, you still got to make the right selections. It's just not like, oh, we drafted 2 D tackles, we're good. They got to be the right D tackles, got to be the right linebacker, got to be the right slot corner, let's say, swing tackle. So I'll have faith until I don't, because even, once the draft happens, everyone's going to have report cards the next day, and it means nothing because we have no idea how everyone's going to turn out. But they have the ammunition. But what you had said earlier, and sorry, I got off on a soapbox, the money issue, who knows? I mean, all of this dead cap space, $80+ million, like you mentioned, is essentially money they paid already. It's just accelerating now, and it's dead cap space, but they still have $44+ million under to work with. And I'm sure at some point, if the Niners perform really well this year, say they get to the Super Bowl, or, I mean, that might be a pipe dream, but divisional round, and it looks like they're a couple players away, I can see them going for it again. And then, of course, if Jed sells 10% of the team for $900 million, you can't cry cash issues at that point, right? You just can't. So it depends on, I guess, performance, what they do financially with the team. Yeah, they were top 4 in spending money. None of us want to be tops in spending money. At some point, we have to be like, all right, let's slow down a little bit. It may be a year or two slow down, but I don't think they're going to get like Bengals cheap. And I think if that's a worry that a lot of people have, I don't necessarily think it's a real one.
Well, I think with me, what makes me nervous a little bit is where I kind of disagree with you a little bit, not really in a like an angry way, but defensive line is probably the weakest it's been
Yeah.
and since they've been here, other than Bosa. I mean, both tackles are bottom level defensive tackles. Yetur Gross-Matos is probably a better rotational end slash DT. So seeing them make all these like middle of the pack C-level free agent moves, I made a comment that they look a lot like roster filler for training camp. Somebody said maybe more along special teams. So there's that.
Mm-hmm.
But and I'm not saying you spend just to spend, right? Like, oh, we have 42 million. Let's blow our wad and go get somebody. No, but you have needs at defensive tackle and at defensive end. So even if you go out and you sign 2 players, right? You sign an edge guy who's a 1-year deal. Cool. You sign a defensive tackle who's a 1-year deal. Cool. Now all of a sudden that number 11 pick, at least for me, goes best player available. They're setting themselves up because of the decisions that they've made and to be frugal with not going after big name. Everybody's like, oh, they're going to get Jonathan Allen. Didn't happen. Oh, they're going to get Joey Bosa. Didn't happen. They're setting themselves up. And this is where my worry comes in, that they have to hit 100% in this draft. Like every pick has to matter. And that's where kind of the worry and kind of like, what are we doing? Like, what's the plan? I get the plan. I get this having to pull back some of the spending because in the end it didn't net us Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand the thinking of like, hey, I let you guys spend all this monopoly money of mine and you couldn't net yourself a championship in 8 years.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to take some of that away from you. Totally get it. That being said, some of the moves they've made in free agency are a little bit questionable, at least to me. And so that's kind of where I am right now as far as like the draft. Yeah, we could probably use another linebacker, but wow, we could have, taken care of that in free agency with one, middle of the road signing where at least we make it a competition with, D Winters and those guys.
Mm-hmm.
So now essentially it looks like it's the hole to me. So that would be another draft pick that you have to allocate to linebacker that you really probably need to either go to an interior defensive line or edge or possibly a center. So those are some of the questions that I have.
I think the things that we're most curious, and that's all totally fair. And I agree with you. It makes the draft matter more so this year than probably in Kyle's run. And his first year, he didn't have many. He had a lot of whiffs between Solomon Thomas at the top and Reuben Foster, and Ahkello Witherspoon was trash until the last 2 years with the Rams. And they drafted a QB in Beathard, and the running back was Joe Williams out of Utah was terrible. They did draft DJ. I mean, their drafting has been middle of the road outside of last year. Now, just because last year happened and it was without Adam Peters, everybody who's with Washington, there's no guarantee that this year's draft is going to be as good. Last year is the high watermark of drafting a class by John and Kyle and their assistant director of scouting, everybody involved. So yes, it makes the picks more important. But the curious stuff that happened was getting rid of someone like a Leonard Floyd before they had a Joey Bosa. It just felt like, why would you release him before you had something in hand? Then you look at stats that are out there online that his pass rush win rate and run defense win rate was like bottom 5 among DNs. So his 8.5 sacks were hollow. He's not a big end. He's 240. I mean, a lot bigger than me, but they might want to go more stout under Saleh now. Who knows? And Gross-Matos fits that bill. Sam O, not really, because he's 6'1". And we'll see who we can bring in. The D tackles, the Malik Collins, release was curious also. Um,
Also
but
poor against the run too.
But I mean, at some point, the D line was bad, so you have to make moves, right? You can't
Yes.
you can't just keep everybody and add to it. You have to release some people and add to it, so you can get to, I keep saying, the magic number of 10, like no more than 5 DNs and no more than 5 D tackles are going to make it on the 53. So, they're going to draft 2 D tackles, I would imagine. There's probably going to be another 1 or 2 undrafted rookie free agents. Someone's going to shake free 1 or 2 later on, or come September, a veteran. And the same thing with the DNs. They'll probably draft 1, maybe 2, an undrafted rookie free. Like they'll have bodies. Like I'm not totally worried about that. It might not be the big sexy names, but the first
Right.
two weeks of free agency are big money waves. Like Chase Young getting what, 16, 17 million a year to stay with the Saints. He's not worth it. I mean, we saw the contracts that were given out. So for the Niners to get in on it, it would have cost them money. But we'll stay with the curious theme of Azeez Al-Jawari going from the Giants to the Eagles for $4 million, a 1-year deal. That could have been a player for San Francisco. But when you look at his production, I mean, he's better than what they have, but is he worth a 1-year deal and maybe taking up a roster spot for a rookie DN that maybe could perform 80% for less, and you have him for 3 more years? There's so many, you could look at it so many different ways, and there's so many different variables in play that I'm not blindly following what the organization is doing. I still want to see, and people are acting like free agency's done. I mean, free agency happens through the whole season. Like there's so many months left for training camp and players to get released in preseason right before the season starts, trades during the draft to happen. So I'll reserve judgment until I see the 90-man roster, right? Like, am I worried? Do I hope that they do conduct a draft like I've done my mock drafts? Yeah, it'll never happen. And they've forgotten more than I'll probably know about how they want to build a team, but they're not at
How
their
many
camp
of your
roster
mock
yet.
drafts have you taken James Pierce at 11?
Haven't.
Uh,
I mean, I've done, sometimes Mason Graham will fall, the D tackle at Michigan, sometimes one of the O tackles, whether it's Will Campbell or Kelvin Banks or Membao from Missouri. But I think what I've always done with the first 3 picks are some combination of D tackle, D end, O tackle, like that. Because we talk about building the trenches, and then take another D tackle later, take a guard later. If you want another D end or a rush linebacker, you could take it later. But they do need, I mean, we saw I think the offensive line was better than people give it credit for. And Brock being mobile makes it look a little better than people probably think it is. But the D line, Salah's going to help immediately, scheming it up, but they need younger talent and more bodies and a different look.
Agreed. I'm going to read you some of the names of the free agents we brought in, and we can pick out. So the most recent is Saron Neal, defensive back, looks like more of a special teamer.
Yeah.
Tight end Luke Farrell. I thought we could stop on Luke Farrell. A lot of us thought, okay, this is the end of the Kyle Juszczyk era, right? The Niners are now going from 21 to 12 personnel. That was the talk all over social media. Again, take everything what you see with a grain of salt, because a lot of people are talking out their ass, right? What was your thought on the Luke Farrell signing at tight end?
Not surprising. I mean, the Niners did try to sign a tight end away from the Lions last year. It wasn't for $7 million a year. It was about for 4.5 or 5, and the Lions matched. So even though Kyle hasn't had luck getting a tight end too, I'm not sure if Luke Farrell is going to be the end all be all fix it, but he can block. He actually has had more receptions per year with Jacksonville than any tight end the Niners have had ever outside of Jordan Reed in the COVID year. So at least that's a step up. And I agree with you. He was never, I mean, unless it was a personnel and philosophical shift, he was never a replacement for Kyle Juszczyk. I still believe that if Kyle had signed with the Steelers, that Braden Willis would have been given the first crack at fullback.
Okay.
As a converted tight end, if they were going to keep that personnel formation intact. Now Juszczyk comes back and all's well. I know it's driving Grant Cohn up a wall, which is fantastic because he's a schmuck anyway. But tight end 2, great. I mean, they have at least tight end 2 figured out. Now it's who's tight end 3 and 4. Is it going to be Jake Tonjes? Is it going to be Mason Pline, Braden Willis? Or I think they should spend a mid-round draft pick, say 4th or 5th. I don't think they have a 6th anymore, on a tight end again, we're getting younger. So now you have a 32-year-old Kittle, a 27-year-old Luke Farrell, and maybe a 22-year-old tight end as tight end 3, as a nice mix in your tight end room to help round out that position group, because it's been a whole lot of nothing for far too long behind Kittle.
One name that I kind of shook my head at, then when I thought about it, is actually a really good move, and I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me, was the Mac Jones signing as a backup. I like it. I like it. He's what Kyle always wanted anyways. I think, and you know, and as well as I know, being older 49er fans, Kyle didn't want Trey Lance. That was an organizational pick. I think Kyle wanted Mac Jones.
So I've been thinking about this. Kyle has final decision on personnel, right? So I think it's a hard sell for me to think that anybody would have talked Kyle out of a player, one on offense and two at quarterback.
Okay.
And I know we always go back to, we've talked about it, that Buffalo game a couple of years ago where the Bills trounced the Niners. I think it was a Monday night game, and Kyle even talking afterwards about that type of quarterback, big, strong arm, can move. And that's where he wanted to maybe take his offense. They swung, they tried. I don't know. I'm of the belief that it was probably always Trey Lance, or it was Trey Lance and Mac Jones, and he wasn't sure, and he still wanted that player. And I'll be surprised if Trey Lance is on a roster at all this season. That's not the XFL or whatever it is, UFL. Mac Jones, outside of Jacoby Brissett, it was either he or Mac Jones that I wanted. I thought they both could have come cheap. The fact that he signed a 2-year deal is nice. So it's not just a revolving door at backup quarterback every year, 1-year deal, 1-year deal, 1-year deal. It's not a leverage play for Brock. It's not, Kyle finally got the quarterback he wanted in 2021. It's none of that. It's, in my opinion, one of the two best, and then Gardner Minshew might have been the third, one of the 2 or 3 best backup quarterbacks for Kyle's system. You know, he's accurate. You know, he can process. And then probably Tanner Mordecai is going to be QB3. So I'm with you. Like, I'm sure I think the talking heads like the Mac Jones signing because it's gossipy. You could talk about it. It's juicy. What does this mean for Brock? It doesn't mean anything. But I think he's also a good backup type of reclamation project for Brock too. So I'm with you. Thumbs up.
I want to talk about a little bit about Trey Lance. You talked about it. He might have trouble finding a roster. Do you think, and I know you know where I'm going with this, do you think the talking heads that were mad that the 49ers let him go for Brock Purdy, a group of individuals we know very well, do you think they're finally going to take the L on Trey Lance? Or do they still believe, if given the opportunity, he could be a starting level quarterback? Just wondering.
I think there's still a group of people, I don't know how big the number is, of people that still think that the Niners did him dirty, and that even if he didn't stay in San Francisco, that he could still be a viable starting quarterback. And Trey Lance believes that. And I'm sure we both seen on social media the quote where he's viewed as a QB3 with high upside, which is the most backhanded of compliments I think you could probably give anybody, including a quarterback who wants to start. No, I think some people still believe that. I don't think they're ever going to take the L because they can verbally say they took the L, but they dug that hole so deep and were so adamant about, coping that Lance was better than Brock. And we'll never know. And the reason why these people are going to always say that is we will never know. Just like I got the Star Wars analogy, we'll never know what George Lucas's sequel trilogy will be because he never made it. But it leaves Star Wars fans to think, well, it will be better. It would have been better than whatever was put out there because it was Luke. No, did you see the prequels? You can't just say it would be better because we don't know the proof. The funny thing about the Trey Lance thing, though, is Cooper Rush was signed to be the backup of Lamar Jackson, a mobile quarterback. And Trey Lance, a mobile-ish quarterback, never got a sniff at that. So I don't know how many QB3 in San Fran, QB3 in Dallas, never could be QB2 in Dallas, and is not getting a sniff as a backup now. I don't know how many more L's people need to take before they actually realize, like, we're right. You guys are wrong.
The problem with that whole situation too is like he wanted out once he found out Brock was the starter. He threw a fit. He wanted out of here. And essentially now he proved the 49ers right because he can't even make it as a third string quarterback in the National Football League. I mean, people aren't looking at him. He's definitely not a backup quarterback, that's for sure. So it's I wish he could have been something. I don't know why we're talking about him. I just had to bring him up, but I wish he could have been something because I could have. It would have been awesome to see an evolved offense with a big, strong quarterback that can move. But he like Anthony Richardson on the Colts, they just hadn't played enough quarterback coming into the NFL to justify the pick. And as you could see with Anthony Richardson, it's not going to work out with him either, unless he has a Troy Aikman type arc to his career where like all of a sudden they bring in a running back, a receiver, and a really good defense, and they become a Super Bowl champion. I just yeah. So there's that. One player in free agency that I looked at and thought was pretty cool was Demarcus Robinson, the wide receiver from the Rams. Very intrigued because he's actually a reasonably what's the word I'm looking for? Reasonably productive for the amount of snaps that he got and the amount of attempts and throws that he got thrown his way. Thoughts on Demarcus Robinson? Because I actually liked the move when they made it.
No, I think it was really good. I mean, they last year before injuries, they had a logjam at receiver between Ayuk, Debo, Pearsall when he got healthy, Jennings, of course. But he's probably what they were hoping Chris Conley was going to be for them, a little bit more productive. And he's a couple of years younger. I think he's 31 years old, but he's the type of player with his production as to why I'm not worried about Debo being gone. Like, Debo had not even 700 yards receiving last year. Am I worried about replacing 700 receiving yards? It's not 1,700. It's 700. And I think he could get that, or Pearsall could get that. Ayuk, even if he only misses the first month of the season, he could get that. So I think it was a sneaky Jennings too. I don't want to forget him. He got over that. He had almost 1,000 yards. I think it was a sneaky good signing, better route runner than Debo, bigger than Debo, better hands than Debo. He's not going to do the gadget stuff, but now maybe the gadget stuff goes away and the offense isn't going to be crippled when Debo can't play or gets hurt in the first quarter or something. And it was a Debo-centric type of offense. So I like the signing, and I like the fact that it was 2 years just from a cover your ass, hedge your bet standpoint, because Juwan Jennings is only signed for this upcoming season. And if he has another good, close to 1,000-yard season, he may get the Darius Slayton contract treatment, $12-13 million a year for Darius freaking Slayton. If I'm Juwan Jennings' agent, I'm like chomping at the bit to get to free agency after this year to get my client $10+ million. So he at least would be a cover next year in 2026 if Jennings doesn't come back.
Yeah, it's Debo is the one player, like you said, that I'm not really worried about them replacing when it comes to production. Because if you think about Debo outside of 1 year, I mean,
1,000th yard year.
Yeah. He was never a wide receiver. He was more of a gadget guy. I just think the 49ers need to evolve in that area. Like you said, stop making it to be an offense that is so centric on one or two guys. I like to see an offense that is versed in its like ways of getting other people the football.
Yep.
And it teaches Kyle and makes Kyle game plan harder than just riding the hell out of certain players. And then when they get injured, Kyle doesn't have any, clue what to do or how to facilitate balls to different players, getting people touches. So yeah, there's definitely that. There was a signing that happened yesterday that I called that we wouldn't make a move on, but I was hoping we would, and that was Juan Thornhill, the safety. I looked at Juan Thornhill essentially as a Tayshaun Gibson type situation, kind of a veteran, middle of the pack safety who could have come in and automatically been the free safety with Malik Mustafa at strong safety. And I was a little bit pissed off that they let him out of the building, but yet not surprised. I don't know what their numbers are this year and like what they're offering people if it's like a 1 year, $8 million, no matter what position you are.
Yeah.
Because it seems like, geez, like Joey Bosa got 10 million. Was it 10 million or 12 million?
I think a little over 12 from Buffalo. Yeah.
And then if he makes, he has certain things that they put in his contract, he can get up to 15. Any thoughts on the Juan Thornhill move? Because I thought that would have been a player I wouldn't mind them.
No, I thought it would have been a good signing, and I was expecting a veteran safety to come in to pair with Malik Mustafa. Now, they brought the safety in from the Falcons, who may be more special teams than actual
Richie
starter
Grant.
material. Yeah. Jason Pinnock, they actually have him listed as a cornerback on the official website, but I'm sure they'll probably try him out in both areas just to see. So they have two veteran options there. George Odom is not an option. Could they draft a safety? Yeah, if they keep 11 picks, or even if they make 9, safety's on the table. Veteran safety later on, someone shakes free, still on the table. So while they've satisfied it with, by the letter of the law, signing 2 veteran players that have safety experience, and the Jason Pinnock one is so funny. Some people are like, oh, Robert Saleh drafted him, and now he's back with Robert Saleh. You could see Saleh's imprint, and when you look stuff up, he played 1 year with the Jets. He got released after his rookie year, got waived, and then the Giants signed him, and he was with the Giants for 3 years. So how much does Saleh actually really like him if he couldn't keep him on the roster? But good enough player for the Giants. Living in the Northeast, we probably see too many Giant games than we want to. So they've they've brought in 2 veteran safeties. I don't think they're going to be done because, again, for their 90-man roster, they might have 8 or 9 safeties on the roster, and then may the best 4 win. Who knows? But that would have been at least a good name recognition player with a lot of playing experience and a good player that he could have slotted in at a 2-year deal. I know he went to Pittsburgh. I'm not sure what the years were or the numbers were, but I can't imagine it was anything staggering.
Yeah, the amount of money getting thrown around in free agency this year is asinine. For guys like Javon Kinlaw, I'm just like, oh my God. He's such a bad player. He's not a good player. And yet he's making an assload of money, which to me is even funnier because it's like you think an unpaid Javon Kinlaw is a bad player. Wait till he has money. So it is what it is. John Weeks, long snapper, replaced Tabor Pepper. Why?
The new special teams coordinator is putting his stamp on the special teams unit, bringing in a safety, bringing in the linebacker from Tennessee. Now you have the corner from the Dolphins who could play some slot or is going to be a backup corner at the worst. Get rid of Pepper. We don't probably examine special teams enough to know if he's snapping okay or not. He's been with the team for around 10 years, and this is the one position where they got older. So they release him and they bring in a 40-year-old for 1 year.
Our age.
Yeah, he's all right. So now they're going to be looking for a long snapper next year anyway. And all the while, Jake Moody is still on the roster, as is Mitch Wishnowsky. But either one of those could be booted, once the draft is over or undrafted rookie free agents come in. Listen, we can't say they're not trying to revamp it, right? If they're bringing in 4 or 5 players from the outside, they're trying. But the problem is if your kicker and your punter are going to be as unreliable as they were last year, is it really going to matter what all the ancillary pieces are? Probably not.
You took the words right out of my mouth. You have all these peripheral guys you're adding, but your kicker is still a mentally weak, soft as soy boy, kicker who, if you yell at him wrong, he'll cry to himself into a corner, So
they got to bring in competition. I can't imagine them not bringing in 2 other kickers for competition.
I don't know if you've done it. I don't know a ton about the draft. I'm not I've done some mock drafts. Every single mock draft I've done, I took in a kicker with our last pick from Florida State. I forget his name. I've taken him as our kicker. I'm like, we're drafting. I don't care. Got like a horrible grade on the draft. When they rated the pick, I got like a B plus draft. But my final pick of the draft, every single draft that I've done has been a kicker. So
it's like fantasy football. That's the rule. Last pick, take your kicker.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about the 49ers bringing back Kyle Juszczyk, uh, releasing him. The talk was he didn't want to take a pay cut. I heard a conversation and somebody said that he did take a pay cut last year and that I was wrong. Turns out he didn't take a pay cut last year. And then they asked him to do it again this offseason. And he knew the cap constraints, so he wanted to go take a look elsewhere. Ended up coming back. He didn't want to leave the Bay Area. A lot of people were saying a lot of things like Ambry Thomas about people wanting to get the hell out of San Francisco. So a lot of people were reading into that. But then once he said he wanted to come back, a lot of people changed their tune saying, oh, maybe the Niners, maybe it's not as bad as what Ambry Thomas is saying, like he knows anything anyways. Absolute dog water defensive back. But I kind of feel a little bit better just because he's back, just because he's been here a little bit. But I'm still of the mindset, like, you talk about getting younger and getting cheaper. He's still making more than pretty much every fullback in the NFL, and he's making $4 million a year. So I don't know. I was okay with him leaving. It's cool that he's back because, like I said, it's a little bit of like a comfort thing, but at the same time, he's still making way too much. So, what was your take on the whole thing?
I think the numbers were higher than I thought. What he was a player that I discussed as would love to have him back, but I can understand why they would let him go or why he would go and not want to take a pay cut for a second consecutive year. Coming back, I thought his market, I mean, he could have gotten more from the Steelers, and I think he was looking at Seattle, right? Maybe talking to two teams, that he could have gotten more from at least one of those teams than San Francisco ultimately gave him. So teams see his value. I know not everyone appreciates what he does. And I know there's folks that have said to me, oh, his blocking has clearly dropped off the past couple of years. You're not, I mean, no, it's adequate. It's fine. Like they're a bad goal line running team for whatever reason. That's not Juszczyk's fault. How about the line? How about the play calls? How about the running backs that are in there or what the defense is doing? They're not a power. This is not a power running team, guy. This is a more finesse zone, outside zone speed type of offense, at least from the running back position. McCaffrey's fast. Guarendo's faster. Just Patrick Taylor's slow. I think it's a comfort thing. I think it gives Brock another weapon. I think it helps out even with Farrell coming in as tight end too, since Juszczyk for the past 3 years has more receptions than any other tight end on the roster other than Kittle. So another option. We've seen his hands throughout the years, the playoff game on the sideline against the Lions when Brock was rolling left. I mean, Juice has value. I was just surprised at 2 years, $8 million versus 2 years, $6 million. Or 2 years, 5.5. I thought it would have been like a cut in half number that everybody could have potentially, that's not my money, right? Potentially lived with. But I wonder how much like Kyle went to bat here. And he was one of the first free agent signings they made, right? Back in 2017. Like he might have gone to bat or I say put his foot down, something. Long story short, glad he's back. Probably got $1 million, $1.5 million, $2 million more a year than I thought just because he was released.
Yep. One player that is not coming back in the backfield, and that's Jordan Mason. And I guess we'll save about $5 million a year. Yeah. A lot of people thought, hey, maybe with Mason going, that would go and make a free agent signing or two. That hasn't happened yet. So, little bit disappointed to see him go. He's very productive. Did very well. I mean, they wore him into the ground too as well last year. Once Christian McCaffrey was gone, but I'm not really worried. You know, they have Christian, they have Guarendo. Patrick Taylor is You know they're going to make a move, undrafted free agent. They're going to draft a running back for sure. I can almost guarantee it. Bobby Turner's still on this coaching staff. So as long as that's the case and as long as he's still here, I'm not really worried. I guess my only thing would be is Kyle going to learn with Christian McCaffrey coming back next year to figure out a rotation?
He should. I mean, a lot of it's very rare outside of maybe the Eagles, and the Eagles with Barkley still gave, with Barkley fully healthy last year, Kenneth Gainwell and other backs carries versus what, when it was McCaffrey, it was all 95% McCaffrey. You saw it Mason, it was 95% Mason. Then it was Garendo, 95% Garendo. Patrick Taylor comes in against the Cardinals week 18, 95% Patrick Taylor. That's just Kyle's thing. I don't know. I can't imagine it changing. I would like it to. But Mason getting traded, at least it answered my question of a second round tender for $5 million. He was never worth a second round pick to another team. And I wondered out loud, well, could they negotiate a different compensation package versus a second round tender? And the answer is yes. So Mason leaving, you mentioned the running backs that they have there. They also signed from the Jets practice squad last year to, I guess, a 2-year deal, or he's still on the roster. Israel Abanikanda, who is, I know, like a nobody, but like the whole perception is everything mantra comes into play here. Let's say he wasn't on the roster and he was drafted in the 6th or 7th round, or an undrafted rookie free agent. People go nuts. Oh my God, Israel Abanikanda, he might be the number 2. He, like, behind Garendo. Like, it's the fact that he's here already that nobody cares about, versus if he got drafted a month from now, people would be wetting themselves for him. So they got 4 running backs on the roster. I agree with you. They're going to draft one. I can't imagine before the 5th round, because it's not a need. Like, they would be drafting for running back 3 at best, right? McCaffrey's 1, Garendo's 2. I don't care what anybody says. He showed enough, and he had more receptions in 3/4 of a season last year than Mason has had in his whole career. So at least he showed a hands element. Running back is not a big issue for me. Rounds 1, 2, 3, 4. It's not. When there are other needs, and we all know, we've seen what Kyle and Turner and this offense can do with a 5th, 6th, 7th undrafted rookie free agent in the backfield. No need to spend early capital on a position where it's running back 3 at best. And if it's running back 3, that means he's got to play special teams.
Yep.
So it's probably not a feature back anyway.
Well, I want to switch gears, stay on offense. The Brandon Ayuk trade rumors, they're not huge, but there's something that keeps popping up. Now, we know there's some people that like to post a lot of clickbaity stuff. There's a page, I keep tweeting them. There's a page out there has 24/7 in its title. They like to post a lot of stuff to get people's attention that don't end up coming true.
Garbage.
Like Brandon Allen, Joey Bosa being a foregone conclusion, all these other different things. One of the things I've seen over and over and over was Brandon Ayuk. Nobody's really picked up on it on the national level, but I guess just as the two of us sitting here, think the Niners would actually ever make a move and move on from him, considering how big his price tag is? Or do you think, because, he's still hurt, he hasn't recovered, he's not back. So a team would be taking a massive risk to trade for him anyway. So shouldn't that be the end of the conversation to begin with? I don't know. What's your thoughts on it?
So first I'll start off with, I didn't realize Stephon Diggs, who was with the Texans last year, tore his ACL, doesn't have a team yet right now.
Right. That's really strange.
Was working out with somebody, and he's been running routes, and he tore his ACL 3 weeks after Ayuk. Now, Ayuk did an ACL, an MCL, or PCL, whatever. And I think Diggs was just the ACL. But seeing that could have Ayuk maybe tracking to maybe be ready for the start of the season. I'm not a doctor. I have no idea, whatever. And I know Ayuk is due a $20+ million roster bonus April 1st. I know that's come up a lot. Teams are going to want to trade for him. At some point, like, how much money that the team has shed and saved Jed York is going to be enough? They traded Debo before he got his $15 million bonus. They cut $12, $14, $15 million of Javon Hargrave's salary down in the offseason or the end of the season before they released him as a post-June 1st cap cut. Malik Collins is going to be a post-June 1st cap cut. I mean, they've saved probably $40-ish million already that Jed York does not have to pay out on players that are no longer with the team. trading Ayuk feels like, I can't think of another phrase right now, but a give up move. Demarcus Robinson is not the replacement for Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk's the number one. Brandon Ayuk, when healthy or on the road to healthy, can still beat man. He is an answer. He is not a burden. He is a young player that should grow with Brock. And he's a player outside of last year when he got hurt from his rookie year to 2023. He has improved yardage wise every single year up to like 1,300 plus when he was, I think, a second team All Pro in 2023. I don't think you trade that $20 million cash lump payment that Jed York's going to have to make on April 1st should be made, because then I think if you make that trade, then I think you're signaling to your team that we actually are resetting, or we're not putting as strong a foot forward as we could with these constraints. I do not. And the teams that are going to trade for him, of course, are going to lowball the crap out of San Francisco because he's hurt. You don't want, I don't care how much you're saving. You don't want to take a wash on a player that was just re-upped last year. Can we think though,
financially, that would be such a stupid move.
It would be, it's not even like when people say, well, you're throwing, good money after bad money. I don't think it's that. I can't think of a player that got extended. I haven't really thought about this, by a team, not just that, but by a team, and then got traded the next year. I just, he's too good of a player. And when he's that good of a player, when people are still asking about him when he's hurt, like it made sense last season, people were inquiring because, hey, maybe the Niners can't pay 2 receivers, but he's on the mend and teams still want him, but they think, oh, we can get him for 40 cents on the dollar. That ain't good business for a really good top 8, top 10 receiver. You don't let that go.
If the 49ers were to do a trade of him or a trade of Christian McCaffrey, they're signaling to the rest of the league that they are a complete rebooting. And that would be unfair to pretty much everybody else on this roster, including Brock Purdy, and including Fred Warner, including Nick Bosa. So, yeah, I don't think he's going anywhere either. I'd be shocked if it happened. I mean, hell, if we're going to talk about receivers, why don't we bring in an injured Stephon Diggs and see what he can do for us for a low ball? But no, I think he's going to stay. Wasn't big on some of his antics during training camp last year. I thought he handled himself poorly. But I felt like the last offseason and last preseason and training camp, just all around team wise, was just a bad look. It just seemed off in every front. And him acting like a petulant little baby because he had to change his shorts was just kind of like the cream of the crop, or not the cream of the crop, like the top of whatever.
Cherry on top.
Yeah.
There you go.
So yeah, I'm not big on trading away players, especially like you said, the amount of attention that he's getting, being that he's injured, should tell the 49ers all they need to know about moving on from him. No, I wouldn't do it. I think the 49ers would be foolish to do it. So, yeah. And then, of course, there is the Brock Purdy contract. There was a false report that was out saying that he asked for, or that the 49ers offered him, $45 million as $45 million a year. And it was quickly debunked by multiple people as being a false story. And also, if that was the case, it would have been a disrespectful first offer to begin with. And then we just had the Josh Allen contract. My whole thing is this: I don't care what he gets signed for now. I just want it to be sooner rather than later. Somebody put a question up on Twitter. Do you have hope, or what is your prediction for the contract? I said it's going to get done in freaking August. And I because they've shown me over the last 2 to 3 to 4 years that, they say one thing as an organization about getting contracts done and getting people under contract, yet every single time it happens, it always runs into training camp and gets close to running into the regular season. So I would love to be wrong on this one. I hope they sign him before the draft, if not right before minicamp in May.
Mhm.
But I would love to hear your thoughts. I just think that for me to know that they're really being serious and that they're not screwing around and that they're going to, be better about their contracts and all this, and we learned from last year, blah 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 blah. He better not be missing camp and come into camp, in August with barely any reps, because this isn't as good of a team as it was last year, at least not right now on paper. So to come in with that kind of attitude from the front office that like he could just come in, take off wherever he was last year, it'd be fine. I think that would be a dangerous move.
So a couple things. Yeah, so one, I'll start off with one of the last thing you said. On paper, the roster might not jump out with as many like big name players as last year, but I think the team's going to be a better team than last year. I mean, and he's not a player, but Sorensen's gone. Special teams coach is gone. Brad Seeley's gone. You have Saleh, and you have the new special teams coordinator from the Jets. That's going to make a difference, right? And I think health, getting McCaffrey for a full season, let's say, and Ayuk for, let's say, 12, 13 games is going to make a difference. And they did cut some dead weight. I mean, am I going to put money down right now that they're going to be worse than 6-11 this upcoming year? No way. I mean, I wouldn't I'll put money that they're going to be better. I mean, two sports books have the Niners favored to win the West, ESPN Bet and DraftKings. They have them as the 4th and 5th best odds to win the Super Bowl. Like there's still a lot. I'm not betting on the Super Bowl. I would bet on the West. I bet on the West. But the whole thing with the Brock Purdy contract is, see what happens when you sign someone early like Diamador Lenore. You get him for $18 million, and then oops, here's the offseason, and Darryl Stingley of the Texans signs for over 30. Like, their philosophy used to be lock up a player early. Why are they not doing it anymore? It's so
I don't understand
weird.
it.
And we know where he's going to end up, right? Like, he's going to end up in the 50s. He just is. And I don't know how much dancing. I mean, I know the guaranteed money. Josh Allen just got $250 guaranteed and a $55 million average annual value. And there's some discussion of, well, if Josh Allen's getting $55 million a year, you can't give Brock Purdy more than that. And there's very strong rationale for that the Niners can actually argue. So maybe he ends up in 52 and a half. I don't know. I don't care. Like you said, I don't care what they wind up paying him. What's taking so goddamn long? Like, the Josh Allen contract just happened. There was no discussion. Jordan Love got extended. Jalen Hurts, Trevor Lawrence, like Jared Goff, they just get extended.
Yeah,
There's none of this BS. Oh, they're going to lowball him, and does he deserve it? Like, it just happens.
Just sign him. Like, stop trying to be like, oh, we do things a certain way here in San Francisco with our contracts. Nobody cares. Just go get him signed. Get him in here. Let him throw early. I want to see him in May. I want to see him, get work in with Pearsall early. I would like to see him get work in with Cowing early. It means a lot to have your starting quarterback out there in the beginning of minicamp with all these young guys, especially, but if they bring in another tight end or a late round wide receiver, like, man, oh man, like they haven't won a Super Bowl in the John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan eras. So sometimes I get a little bit impatient with how they do things a certain way. Kind of like they were the Patriots or something, and they like hardball the shit out of players and stuff. And it's just like, yeah, but you're not. You haven't been that team in a long time. I just, to me, it's getting to the point now where some of these contracts where like everybody else in the league is getting stuff done, and we're not even paying attention to it.
I know.
Like, it's not even important. Yet with the 49ers, it's like this big to do. And then they asked John at the combine, and he's like, well, there's not even a guarantee it can get done. I'm like, what are you talking about? What? Like, no, don't tell us that. Like, I want him done, pot and paid for, especially with if I'm him after he got dinged in the elbow at the end of season last year, which was really scary. A lot of us thought he re-injured his elbow. I wouldn't touch the field unless I get paid. So,
yep.
With that being said, if that's the way you're going about it, get his ass paid. Like, I would love to see him get paid before the draft. I would love one of the things that we're talking about draft night when number pick 11 comes up is, and the 49ers just signed Brock Purdy to an extension. Like that would
Yep.
be the perfect thing leading into whoever it is we pick at 11. Hopefully it's an X player. Maybe
I,
it's a wide receiver. I don't know. Maybe it's a tight end. I don't
I,
know.
I, I'm with you. He's one of the faces of the franchise, along with Kittle, Bosa, Warner, McCaffrey, that they need to not dick around with, not insult. Now, negotiating, the team's going to start low, the agent's going to start high. They should meet somewhere in the middle. Not 50, they're not going to split the difference, but somewhere in the middle. And Brock is so polarizing in terms of his talent and needing the Avengers. Everyone's saying, and he's just not good enough. He's not worth this much money, although his peers are making it. So I'm curious to see when it happens. And I'm with you. It should happen before the draft. We're talking 5 weeks from now. And the season ended for them beginning of January. I know everybody wants to take a little bit of time off, do your Cabo stuff. I get it. You want to decompress after a season that went so sideways. But you know the market. It's not like they have all the data points they need. Tua, Love, Jalen Hurts. Now it's Josh Allen. You have Dak at the top. Like you have your data points. Any one of us that is as much of a Brock believer as John and Kyle are, kind of knows the ballpark they're going to be in. The dancing around, the structure, the guaranteed money, if they can get out of it in 2-3 years. Yeah, it's almost like an architectural drawing, like a game of Jenga. But we know where it's going to end up. So this should be priority one right now for them.
With the season ending when it did.
I know.
Like what? Why? What? Like the season ended in January.
Yep.
Players, I mean, to us, the season ended in the end of November because we were so bad. But like the season ended at the end of the beginning of January. That contract should be all but like in the finishing, phases of it. As they would say, crossing the T's and dotting the I's.
It should have been done before free agency. To know how much like his cap hit was going to be, how much they have to work with.
And I think that's another thing that's stopping him from signing people.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to get, it's still, Dak's getting 231 guaranteed, Trevor Lawrence 200, Joe Burrow 219. I mean, he may not get near that, and we'll see how much of that is just a check that he gets the day that he signs, fully guaranteed at signing. Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not crying for Jed York and that family. They have it. They have it. Think about all the other crap that happens at Levi's Stadium, concerts, soccer games, like
wrestling.
They're not crying. Like they have the goddamn
Super Bowl's coming next year.
What's that?
The Super Bowl is there next year. Yeah.
They have it. Like I know when you're hesitant to keep spending when there's no payoff, but let's just say the Niners won the Super Bowl in 2023. They'd still be going through this now. Right? It's not like the Super Bowl would suddenly make them the Yorks that much wealthier that they could weather everything that's happened so far. It probably would have been the same type of maybe Leonard Floyd stays or Malik Collins, like maybe one or two players stay, but I think the rest had to have happened because of the amount that they've spent. And I don't think a Super Bowl would have allowed them to keep spending willy-nilly.
Last thing I just want to touch on real quick is based on where they pick, based on what their needs are. I'm edge all the way at 11, and I'm not moving off of it. I don't care who it is. I mean, I care to an extent, but every mock draft I've done, I've gone edge at 11. I'm not moving off of it. What is Al on March 19th at 9:02 p.m.? What position? Or are you moving? What are you doing? Are you moving out of 11? Are you moving back? Are you trading up? Or are you staying at 11? And if it is, what position are you going for?
So I did a mock draft today, and I think who was available. I've never done a trade back, just because everything I do or any of us do with the mock draft is unrealistic because we have no idea what's going to happen. So to add another layer of improbability of trading back, just to me feels odd. Plus, I think they're, I don't want to get more picks. I think they're going to make less picks, at least in my opinion anyway. But it was Membao, the tackle from Missouri,
Okay.
was my pick. Now it's either, if one of the three main tackles, either him or Will Campbell, maybe Banks from Texas is there, I can see them making that pick. If the tackle from Michigan, if Mason Graham is there, we know they need a tackle, I can see them making that pick. I do not want Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M. He feels like another workout warrior, Mike Mamula. If you can't produce at Texas A&M, and I don't know what makes us think he's going to flip the switch and produce in the NFL. I think this is a draft where if they went tackle or D tackle in the first, there's going to be, at least projections, some good tackles available in the second round, whether it's Landon Jackson from Arkansas, Jack Sawyer, or the other DN, I'm going to butcher his last name, from Ohio State. Maybe Princely from, Ole Miss will be there. So I think there's options at DN. It's just a matter of the body type, I guess, that maybe Kyle and Robert Saleh want. Any one of those, it's got to be a line player, O or D, for me. And I would be happy with, if they were to draft Will Johnson, the cornerback out of Michigan, it would raise an eye. If they were to draft the tight end Tyler Warren out of Penn State, that would raise both eyes, because I certainly don't think they need that. I don't think they should draft a linebacker at 11 or a safety. Like, there are the biggest need on the team is the D line. It looked bad. It couldn't stop the run. They weren't getting any pressure, and Saleh will help. That is the biggest need. And then O-line is kind of right there, because they do need a tackle of the future for McKivitz or Williams. And maybe it's someone that could play guard the first year. Who knows? Build the trenches, right? They have to go one of the lines. If they don't, I will be flabbergasted.
If I'm the Niners, I go in some combination of edge, offensive line, whether it be guard, center, or tackle, interior, back to edge within your first 4 picks.
Mm-hmm.
And some kind of combination like that.
Mm-hmm. I'm down with that.
Maybe go interior defensive lineman and go center in the second round, go to edge, something. And this had, like, we talked about it, and maybe I'm more worried than you are. But this, with the way that they've positioned themselves in free agency so far, and the way that they're not spending and throwing money around for many reasons, contracts, quarterback stuff about to happen, Jed York pulling back the reins with the spending. This is like the most important draft they've had probably since the 2019 draft, when they drafted Nick Bosa. I mean, the Niners got to hit at least on 5 to 6 players in this draft.
I'm with you. Yeah. And
so that's the thing. If they do, then all the whining and complaining and the questioning I've been doing, because in the beginning, when everything happened, I was like you. I was like, they got to get cheaper. They got to do this. Mike Finn, he's on X. He watches the show sometimes. He knows what I'm talking about. Like, we were all kind of in the same place. But then I started thinking, like, man, they're really kind of painting themselves into a corner with this draft, with the way that they're kind of doing stuff in free agency, but a lot of it seems like special teamers, a backup tight end, and nobody's really making that much money. A lot of the deals are like 1-year deals.
Yep.
So I'll tell you this, though, and then we can get out of here. We haven't had a draft in years, because we've been pretty good, where we had to pay attention within the first hour or so. So it's going to be kind of good and cool to be, at 9, whatever it was, maybe 9:15 on a
risk
Thursday
of falling
night.
asleep this year.
Not this year, baby. We're going to be invested. And then, knowing us and the people we know, somebody's probably going to do some sort of a YouTube reaction. Maybe, I know Trey Area Sports, I don't know if he's still here, but he wanted to do maybe like a draft reaction, which is kind of weird, because I know YouTube tends to take stuff down when you try to do it. But I would love to sit there and be like either really pissed off or happy, and just get the honest, real reactions of us, like sitting there watching it. So, but
no, listen, I'm with you. Important draft, build the trenches. It's so hard the first 2 weeks to do that when you see how much Dahlman got from the Bears, how much Jalen Moore got from the Chiefs, what Aaron Banks got from the Packers, Javon Kinlaw, Javon Hargrave going to the Vikings, right, for like $15 million a year. Allen getting about, I think, $20 million a year. It was so hard to.
There was no way we were going to compete with those numbers.
No, right. It was so hard to fill a need. I mean, you really have to wait for like wave 2 or wave 3 or whatever wave is after the draft and see what you didn't get a chance to fill. And then you bring in a veteran on a 1-year deal to help whatever.
Just don't bring in Von Miller.
Yeah. And then that could be, listen, part of the game plan too is, all right, let's pause for now. Let's maybe not sign that extra guard or another D. I mean, they do have 4 D tackles on the roster. They're, for whatever it's worth, it's Givens, Kalia Davis, Evan Anderson, and Jordan Elliott. They're going to draft 2. You're at 6, maybe 1 or 2 undrafted rookie free agents and a veteran. They're going to be at 9 or 10 D tackles. I'm not super duper worried about that, but maybe the philosophy is, all right, let's just wait. I mean, if somebody comes to us, an agent for a D tackle, a guard, a DN is like, hey, we're interested. What would you guys want to do? And we can come to a fair or below market agreement. Cool. But they may say, let's see what we can do in the draft. And then whatever's outstanding after that, beginning of May, then let's attack those, next couple holes. But I mean, we saw the stupid money people were getting. And if people were paying stupid money, the Niners were trying to get rid of stupid money. It was a math equation that was never going to work. Those
pay stupid money, win stupid prizes. Giving Javon Kinlaw and Javon Hargrave money.
Where did Kinlaw go again? Who signed him?
Commanders.
Yeah, oh gosh.
They replaced a way better player went out the door than came in. Why would you so Jonathan Allen, because he's maybe a malcontent, you're going to send him away and you're going to get in a guy who is so much worse as a player and as a head case, and you're going to pay him more than what you would have paid Jonathan Allen there. For every 2 steps that they go forward and as a franchise and they look good, the Commanders, man, that was a dumb move. That was definitely an Adam Peters, I'm going to do good by a guy that I drafted type thing. So, but we're going to get out of here, guys. I might be back at the end of this week, but things as we get closer to the season, things will be back more on par with what they were with the Monday show, possibly another show with Al as the week goes on. We'll figure all that out in the future. Everybody have a great rest of your
evening,
and we'll talk to you later. Peace.
Take care, all.